for there is nothing covered that will not be revealed, nor hidden that will not be known.
You are about to embark on crime history, the biggest crime in Sacramento history, and perhaps the most unique crime in U.S. history. You might be wondering why you've never heard of this crime before. By the end of this video, you'll discover the answer, along with the identities of many of those involved, and how they helped it to become the big crime that it is. As you view the montage of individuals connected to the crime, take note of whom you recognize. Remember, for 33 years, this crime story has been unfolding, and not a single one of these individuals has reached out to the Charles Nordby family to protest being linked to this crime through various websites, letters, and postcards. This silence speaks volumes. A conspiracy of silence has surrounded this case. Enjoy the show seeing his justice in the making. They all knew about it. They all chose to remain silent. They are complicit in some way in Sacramento's biggest crime. Every individual involved must have feared crossing Joyce Raley Teel, the bitter and angry billionaire. She must have gone into a rage when she discovered that her entire wealth and company's success was built on the efforts of a man she didn't even know. A man who held the power to take it all away, but all he wanted was to be honored for what he did. The greatest success story in Sacramento history. Instead, the Raley family committed the heinous crime of fraud against a man named Charles Nordby. Once they learned he had returned to Sacramento to tell their true success story, they set out to destroy the man who came to save them. However, their crimes are coming back to haunt them, exposing everyone involved. Since 1991, due to Joyce Raley Teel's accumulated wealth from these crimes, all of Sacramento's news media have had to suppress the Raley crime story to shield her, her company, and all the players involved, which included every news outlet in the Sacramento area. KCRA3, Sacramento Bee, Sacramento Union, KOVR 13, KXTV 10, KTXL 40, Sacramento Magazine. Even Dateline NBC nearly pleaded with us for exclusive rights to the Charles Nordby success story until they realized that this success story was evolving into a significant crime story that would not only expose KCRA3, their NBC affiliate, but all of Sacramento's news media for silencing and concealing this monumental fraud from the public. Stan Atkinson, the beloved news anchor for KCRA3, could not report this crime for fear of losing Raley's advertising budget. Do you remember KCRA3's opening line on the nightly news?
This portion of the news sponsored by Raley's.
On March 4, 1992, Stan was even presented with a complimentary book from Charles Nordby while he was still alive, titled, Raley's Exposed? Who on Earth Saved Raley's? Because Raley's advertising budget had ballooned once this crime story began leaking out in 1991, Stan Atkinson and KCRA3 management could not afford to reveal the truth about Raley's and risk losing the lucrative account, potentially worth millions to John Kelly, the owner of KCRA3. As it turns out, because of this story, John Kelly was the king of fake news, and all the reporters and anchors were his puppets. Thus, Raley's hush money had to support all of Sacramento's news media to keep this true crime story under wraps. News reporters were all offered the chance to investigate and view the proof and evidence we would provide so they could report on Raley's crime. Perhaps they were advised to simply look the other way. Yet not a single reporter expressed any interest in seeing the evidence. They were all silenced by the powers that be. If this were not a true story, Joyce Raley Teel and her wealth would have completely obliterated this narrative through legal actions against Charles Nordby. However, they were well aware, based on Charles Nordby's own reputation in the San Francisco Bay Area, that he had never lost a case in court. Ever. Poor Katie Grimes, Sacramento Union columnist, whose article titled, "Why the Truth Matters," initially piqued our interest until she decided that the truth about Charles Nordby didn't matter. After receiving a copy of Charles Nordby's book, she reached out to let us know that she was unable to report on this story because a newspaper the size of the Sacramento Union could be shut down in one day by Raley's. Well, Katie Grimes, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But then again, 16 years ago, no one could foresee just how expansive this crime would become. Welcome aboard, Katie Grimes. Speaking of beautiful newspaper writers, let's consider Diana Griego Irwin, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the infamous Sacramento Bee. However, her article dated January 4th, 1998, titled, "Everyone is entitled to a day in court," suggests she may not have been aware that Charles Nordby was denied his day in court. She too had the opportunity to write about the true Charles Nordby success Raley crime story, but she declined the chance to report on this authentic Pulitzer Prize-winning narrative. In her article dated May 2nd, 1999, on a different topic titled, "Only the Victim is Still Suffering," Diana accurately highlighted the crime against Charles Nordby, stating in her first paragraph, "It happens, and people in positions of power still look the other way, which I can only assume is exactly what the perpetrators in such cases depend on." 25 years later, this sentiment resonates regarding the Raley Teel crime. Nevertheless, the good news is that her daughter managed to marry into the Raley Teel family. Congratulations to Jessica Marie Irwin and Robert Michael Teel. Oh yeah, and don't forget, the entire wealth and success of the Jim and Joyce Raley Teel family stemmed from an act of fraud against Charles Nordby, the very reason you are on this website today. The four leading religious figures in the Sacramento area turned a blind eye and/or lied about Charles Nordby. Louis Neely, Glenn and Rick Cole, Ray Johnston. They too had personal and/or financial ties to Raley's and the Teel family. Money also buys friends. Yet, money cannot purchase a clear conscience before God. The largest law firm in Northern California, Downey, Brand, Seymour, and Rower, violated the rule of law, filed fraudulent court documents, and misled Judge Joe Gray, corrupting and perverting the justice system against Charles Nordby through their courtroom shenanigans and fraudulent legal submissions. Judge Joe Gray either signed or rubber-stamped everything placed before him. Was Judge Joe Gray in the deep pockets of Raley's, or Downey, Brand, Seymour, and Rower? Time will tell. Imagine the most prominent law firm in Northern California being publicly shamed by a 70-year-old man. Now consider this. Everyone chose to ignore how Charles Nordby was wronged. In our view, what they did is comparable to the public rape of an elderly man. Downey, Brand, Seymour, and Rower was caught with their pants down. Now everyone will awaken to the corruption within Sacramento's leading law firm. Law enforcement must have been instructed to stand down in this matter, the sheriff, FBI, and others. Politicians have known about this crime for the past 33 years. Governors, mayors, city hall officials, the Sacramento district attorney, California attorney generals. Yet in 33 years, not one person mentioned in this story has ever questioned its validity, refuted the claims, sought more information, or even shown interest in pursuing justice for Charles Nordby. Isn't that baffling? Not really once you understand the extensive machine involved in this conspiracy of silence. They ensure no one speaks up, because if anyone does, the jig is up. Similar to gang members who vow never to utter a word about the crimes they witnessed. Fraud, theft, collusion, rape, murder, you name it. For over 33 years, the family of Charles Nordby has been sharing his remarkable success story and exposing the crime along with the multitude of individuals who have become complicit. We will continue to do so until the crime is resolved or the injustice is righted. His justice is coming. Now let's all remember the man that Raley's crime is all about. The greater the success of Raley's, the bigger the crime against Charles Nordby. In our opinion, it seems that Charles Nordby was facing off against individuals who could be classified as psychopathic criminals. The trio of Jim Teel, Joyce Raley Teel, and Chuck Collings exhibit characteristics of this nature, showing no remorse for their actions. Psychopaths will do anything to avoid having their crimes discovered, even going so far as to eliminate their victims and making great efforts to hide their illegal actions. They will even ask others for help in covering up their wrongdoing. Given their substantial wealth, they found it particularly easy to conceal their misdeeds. Charles Nordby, a Bay Area retail consultant and the leading expert in his field, told Chuck Collings, Jim Teel, and Frank McMinn that his proven program would give Raley's their highest profits ever, something that would have been fairly easy to achieve, especially since he indicated that the company was worth less than $1 at that time. At the time when Charles first began working to save the company, Raley's, known as the highest-priced stores in town, were filthy, mismanaged, a shoplifter's paradise, and the shelves were barely stocked, which all reflected the true financial condition of Raley's. The company was drowning in debt, struggling to meet its obligations to suppliers, and operating from a cramped and run-down converted townhome office space at 1515 20th Street. Charles Nordby, arriving in Sacramento with his program, was the miraculous turnaround that Raley's needed to stay in business. After Charles Nordby's program successfully revived the bankrupt Raley's, Chuck Collings and Jim Teel secretly committed fraud against him, which ultimately resulted in Charles's departure from Sacramento. After Charles Nordby left Raley's, Chuck Collings and Jim Teel decided to steal his invention and intellectual property, presenting his success as entirely their own. They even went so far as to omit him from the history book titled Raley's, a Family Store. In our opinion, a more appropriate title would have been Raley's, a Crime Family Store. They then distributed their fictional book of success to all of their 8,000 employees during Christmas of 1990, erasing Charles and all he had achieved for them from the narrative, which enabled them to distance themselves from the crime they committed against him. We must recognize that everything that happened at Raley's after 1973 is a direct result of Charles Nordby's success. When you consider all that occurred, it could almost be compared to the California gold rush of 1849. One day, they're struggling and in dire circumstances, and the next, it's as if they've hit a gold vein. Now let's take a closer look at the wealth and assets they've amassed since 1973. Today, Raley's operates 76 Raley's supermarkets and has expanded through various acquisitions. They acquired Mid-Valley Dairy in 1981. Not long after this purchase, the dairy mysteriously burned to the ground, only to be rebuilt as a state-of-the-art facility using insurance funds and rebranded as Sunnyside Farms. The circumstances surrounding the dairy's destruction and later rebuilding raised numerous questions dating back to 1943 when Tom Raley's original Raley's store in Placerville also burnt to the ground and was rebuilt at a different location with insurance money. They purchased Bel Air Markets in 1992, now totaling 21 locations. They then acquired Nob Hill Foods in 1998 and currently operate 18 stores. Bosch's family of stores was acquired in 2021, comprising over 130 locations across Arizona and New Mexico, including Bosch's Dene, AJ's Fine Foods, and Food City. In addition to store acquisitions, Raley's portfolio includes several other valuable assets, such as a distribution center in the New Thomas area, spanning over 855,000 square feet. They moved headquarters to a new facility at 500 West Capitol Avenue, replacing their outdated office space. Ozark Trucking, a family-owned subsidiary of Raley's, was established in 1989. The company manages Raley's entire fleet of commercial semi-trailer trucks, which includes more than 50 tractors and 270 trailers. In 1995, they opened their first of 4 food source grocery stores. In 2020, they launched the first Raley's One Market, and it is now currently operating in 4 different locations. They opened a total of 13 Aisle 1 gas stations in Northern California and Nevada, before selling them to Anabi Oil in 2018. They secured a $15 million naming rights contract for Raley Field, now known as Sutter Health Park. As soon as the Raley Teel family realized their crime had been discovered, they quickly started making substantial charitable donations and engaging in philanthropic activities within the Sacramento community. Here are just a few examples of their contributions. Joyce Raley Teel donated $2 million towards the E. Claire Raley Transitional Living Complex Project's capital campaign. She also contributed to building the E. Claire Raley Performing Arts Studio, both of which were named in honor of her late mother, E. Claire Raley. Joyce Raley Teel has made significant contributions to the Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento, donating over $5 million. The Raley Teel family gifting $2 million to the Sutter Center for Psychiatry, where the Joyce Raley Teel Outpatient Center is now located. In 1986, Joyce Raley Teel and former Raley's president Chuck Collings founded the Food for Families organization. Raley's Food for Families program has raised over $31 million in donations. All of this serves as a reminder of how the Raley Teel family has leveraged their wealth to divert attention away from their crimes. After all, you know what they say, money talks. Keep in mind, all of this increase in Raley's business and acquisitions are all the results of Charles Nordby's success starting in 1973, which means all of Raley's and Joyce Raley Teel's success and wealth all stem from the crime of fraud against Charles Nordby. Not only did the company reap the benefits of Charles' successful program, but so did all of the Raley Teel family, as well as those working in a position of power for the company. They have an extensive portfolio of luxury properties thanks to Charles Nordby. What you're viewing is just a selection of the homes and properties currently owned by the Raley Teel family, Keith Knopf and Bill Coyne. Unfortunately, Charles spent his last years fighting for his honor and recognition against the Raley Teel family and the dishonest, corrupt lawyers at Downey, Brand, Seymour, and Rower. He died bankrupt and living in a single-bedroom trailer in the backyard of a Sacramento home. Name any other business in the United States whose entire success stems from fraud. You can't, and this is what makes this such a unique crime. Another unique aspect of this crime, in 2005, nearly 20 years ago, there was a man who looked homeless, but actually had a substantial amount of money. He heard the story and knew it was true. He, too, was also hungry for justice, so he offered up a $100,000 reward to anyone who could prove that Charles Nordby's success story and Raley's fraud against him were false. No one has ever been able to claim this reward because it is all true. To this day, this man is still waiting to see his justice. What you've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg, with many more details yet to unfold. You might be asking yourself why you've never heard about this crime before, or how Joyce Raley Teel and her family managed to keep their crimes concealed for a staggering 33 years. The answer is simple. Joyce Raley Teel, her family and corrupt legal team at Downey, Brand, Seymour, and Rower managed to use her wealth, influence, and charitable work to manipulate the media, distort her own legal situation, and escape the consequences typically faced for such serious offenses. This isn't the first time we've encountered such behavior. Consider Jeffrey Epstein, whose estimated net worth of $577 million at the time of his public exposure. Epstein wielded his wealth as a weapon, leveraging connections and financial settlements to maintain his illicit activities without consequence. Similarly, Harvey Weinstein, a film mogul worth $25 million, used his position and resources to silence countless women who accused him of sexual assault and harassment. His reliance on power and wealth to intimidate victims echoes how Raley Teel resorted to litigation harassment to keep Charles Nordby from seeking justice. Bill Cosby previously had a net worth of $300 million. He utilized his fame and financial influence to silence victims claiming sexual assault over decades. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, it was only after a sustained public outcry that the truth began to surface. In the same vein, Joyce Raley Teel ensured that Nordby's story remained hidden, burying him under layers of legal intimidation and media control. And then there's P. Diddy, whose worth is $800 million as he's encountering allegations of sexual misconduct, who has faced criticism for using his wealth to evade accountability. Much like Raley Teel, Diddy has strategically leveraged his resources, attempting to shield himself from the consequences of his actions. It's crucial to note that Joyce Raley Teel's crime of fraud against Charles Nordby is not on the same level as the actions of the four men previously discussed. The intent here isn't to diminish the seriousness of any one crime. Rather, the comparison serves to illustrate a stark reality. Just like those men, Joyce Raley Teel used her wealth and resources to silence others and escape accountability. It highlights a pattern where the powerful often sidestep the consequences of their actions. In 2001, Forbes listed Joyce Raley Teel's net worth at an impressive $1.8 billion, which was greater than the combined wealth of all four of those men. This underscores the point that the wealthy, regardless of their specific crimes, often find ways to evade repercussions for their actions. It's a disheartening reminder of how money and influence can pervert justice and shield individuals from the consequences of their behavior. In addition to being featured in Forbes, Joyce Raley Teel was featured in Working Woman's magazine in 1994, the very same year Charles Nordby filed what was then the largest civil suit in Sacramento County. In Working Woman's top 50 women business owners list, Joyce ranked an astonishing second, 42 spots ahead of Oprah Winfrey. This recognition underscores just how much power she wielded due to her immense wealth, firmly establishing her as the wealthiest woman in Sacramento. But it raises an unsettling question. Who else did she influence or control? With such prominence, it's likely she had connections to key figures, including governors, mayors, elected officials, law enforcement, district attorneys, religious leaders, and even California attorney generals. Just like P. Diddy, who, despite his recent allegations, continues to maneuver through legal challenge with the backing of his substantial resources, Raley Teel created an environment where her money could shield her from accountability. The crimes of Jim and Joyce Raley Teel have cast a dark shadow, not just over their family, but also over the many individuals who once believed they were contributing positively to society by helping to sweep these transgressions under the rug. Now, they find themselves dealing with the guilt of their association with such wrongdoing, a burden they never intended to bear. This short documentary is just one chapter of Charles Nordby's many years of exposing crimes and criminals. Throughout our extensive investigations, we have chosen to hold back on revealing certain details for the sake of time. But rest assured, the story doesn't end here. After 33 years of relentless exploration, Raley's may very well hold the title of the most privately investigated company in U.S. history. We invite you to delve deeper into our ongoing work by visiting other pages on charlesnordby.com, raleysupermarkets.com, and joyceraleyteel.com, where we will be continually updating investigations into various aspects of what has come to be known as Sacramento's biggest crime. The search for justice is far from over, and the truth deserves to be told.
For I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and wrongdoing.